Hello everyone, Ken here, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be talking to you about tools in Roblox Studio, what they are, when they're used, and how we make items with them. And as I kind of hinted at already, tools are just a way that we as developers in Roblox Studio can make items. Items are, of course, things that the player can hold and use for different objectives and things like that. They're very useful and they're very versatile, but it requires a basic understanding of what a tool is first, and that's what this video is about. And we'll dive into a little bit about how to use them and different things like that as well, and what to be careful of when using them. So if I were to click on the little plus sign that we have next to our workspace up here and just type in tool and click it, then we see it puts tool in here. But that tool has no physical form in our actual game. We can see there's nothing highlighted in the game. It's got spawn location when I highlight over it, of course. You see there's literally nothing that it added to the actual game window here. And that's because, unless it has something in it, a tool is completely abstracted to the server side, meaning the client doesn't have anything to render it with. The tool is just basically our way of telling the game, hey, this is something that the player is going to be able to pick up. But if there's nothing assigned to a tool, if you will, there's nothing that's a child of that tool object, then the game is just going to think the player's supposed to pick up the air around it, and of course, not be able to, because that's just not how the game works. And so if we were to just place a part, however, and put the part in the tool, and then select it, we can see that the part is now a part of the tool. Of course, it's a child of it, and our game hierarchy over here in the Explorer. And we can see that the tool now includes the part. And you might be thinking, okay, well, cool. So now if I place the game, I should just be able to just walk over and pick it up, right? That's not entirely true. And the reason for that is every tool, by default, has to have a handle. And there is a little property down here under behavior that says requires handle. You can uncheck, but I highly discourage that, especially for multi-part tools. As you can see, it really doesn't do anything anyway. And so the requires handle property isn't something that you want to use for that. And it just really makes it so that the tool can function without a handle, not that the player can pick it up. If I put it in starter pack, and then because starter pack is the player starting inventory when they spawn in, you can put tools in there, and the player will begin with them. So if I put it in starter pack and then places the game, then I have it in my inventory, but you can see as I hold it, there's no handle, so it kind of just sits there on the ground where it was. And that's, of course, not what we want. And I'm saying all of this to say that there has to be a part inside the tool that's named handle with a capital H, and it is case sensitive. So it's capital H, A-N-D-L-E, handle. Again, it has to be a capital H. And now, if I play just the game, and I just walk over this tool, we can see that I actually pick it up and I hold it in my hand, just like I should be able to. Because every tool has to have this handle, and it's the same thing if we place our tool in the starter pack, the starter player inventory, and then play the game. Equip our tool, we can see that we have it, and it's where it's supposed to be now. And a handle is very important because it tells the game what the player is holding the tool by. So let's just say, for the sake of example, I'm going to press F to focus on this part. Let's just say I have two parts, and both of these parts are in the tool. I want the player to hold the tool by this black part, and this white part should just be beside it. I don't want these two parts to be together. I want the player to hold it by the black part and the white part to just be beside it. This is another important aspect about tools that we'll get into in just a moment as well. If I run over it, we can see that it hides the white part when I pick it up, but the white part is completely detached from the black part and doesn't stay where it was relative to it. It just kind of sits there on the ground and doesn't do anything. And that's because tools, when you're using multiple parts, also have to be welded to the handle. And a very simple and easy way to do this is if I just select all the parts in my tool, in which case for me that's just the two of these, and I find this button right here, the constraint. I click on this little arrow drop down here, and I find the weld. And it's been a minute since I've used this, so you'll have to give me a moment. Oh, here it is, sorry, it's not this. Right here, weld. And just click on that button, and I click on these two parts, and we can see that now in our Explorer, from this weld button, clicking on these two parts to weld them together, our handle had a touch interest, which it already had because it's a tool, and a weld constraint added to it. This weld constraint is what we just added, and this weld constraint makes it so that even when the parts are unanchored, their positions are locked to each other. So if this thing were to spin around, it means that the black part would just spin as normal, and the white part would kind of flop around beside it. And it would kind of be like the black part just kind of rolls the way you would expect, and the white part would flop around dramatically every time it rolls. What I'm saying is the positions are just locked relative to each other. And so we can see that part 0 of the weld is handle, part 1 is part. All this means, and this order doesn't matter really, it just means that these two parts are welded together. Their positions relative to each other cannot be changed, and they're still part of the same tool and all of that as well. And so now, if I playtest the game, and I just walk over the part to pick it up, we'll see that my white part is now locked in its position relative to the black part, which is exactly what we wanted it to do. So now, if I hold the black part, then the white part moves with me as I move the black part. Or rather, it moves the black part as I move the black part with me. And so we can see that welds are really important because they make the entire tool stay together in its current form, and it locks the positions of the parts relative to this handle part. That's why it's important that we weld everything to the handle and not something else, because the handle is what the player holds. And if everything's welded to the handle, then when the player moves the handle, which is what they hold, recall, then everything attached to the handle moves with it. This is why a lot of parts in this one tool can get really laggy really quickly, and a good way to handle really complex looking tools is meshes, which we'll have to talk about in another video. Now we have our part here, or parts here rather, and they're welded together and they function as a basic tool. So how do we actually make it do something? How do we make it so, let's just say for the sake of example, when I click, it'll tell me in this little output window that the player clicked. It's a very simple, very straightforward thing to do. To do that, we're going to put a script not in the handle, but in the tool itself, and it can be a server script, that's okay, and it doesn't have to be named anything specific. I'm going to type local tool, and there needs to be a space though, local tool equals script dot parent, and then tool dot triggered, tool dot activated, I'm sorry, that is the correct term. So when the player left clicks with it to activate the tool, we will connect a function to it that passes no variables, as we can see right here. And this will just simply print player, I need to spell it right, player, excuse me, clicked. And we can see that now the tool is the script.parent, so script.parent in our Explorer right here is obviously the tool, that's right. And when the tool is activated, when it's left clicked with, we're connecting a function to it, and this function will just print to the output right here that the player clicked. And so now, if I were to playtest the game and pick up our tool once again and click, we can see that the server on line 4 in this script, line 4, prints player clicked. And we can do as many times as we want, and we can see the number increase as many times as we click more and more the more we click. This is a very basic overview of how tools work in Roblox Studio. And one final thing about tools as well is that we cannot have a part of our tool anchored and expect it to work. So let's just say this handle was anchored for hypothetical purposes, whether I accidentally did it, I meant to, whatever the case may be. If the handle of our tool is anchored, then when we pick it up, you can see instead of moving the tool to us, we, as the player, get moved to the tool. And when we let go of it, a very interesting behavior begins to ensue, and we just created a flying glitch in our own empty game because this handle of the tool is anchored. And the reason this happens is because, as I said, when any part of your tool is anchored, it really just throws off the physics. So even if the non-handle part here is anchored, we're going to see very similar behavior as well, in that we still get locked to the tool. Because remember, these two parts are loaded together so that the positions are locked relatively to each other. But if this part's anchored, it's going to essentially drag this black part here back to itself because of that weld. And so it doesn't matter, even if one part of our tool is unanchored, the whole thing will break and have those weird physics like that. Which is why it's very important that all of our block parts of our tool are completely unanchored. And a good way to check that is if you select your tool and this little anchor icon is shaded the way it is, click it, and it should be not shaded. And that means that the entire tool is now unanchored. And if you're not sure and you think it's anchored anyway, you can always click it to anchor the whole thing, and then click it again to unanchor everything inside of the tool. So a really nice trick that I personally use every time I'm dealing with them. If you have enjoyed this video, I hope that you will consider subscribing and leaving a like, and also comment your requests down below if you have anything that you would like to see me cover in a video like this. I'll cover more advanced tools and how to use them and make them, like swords and guns and everything of that nature in a future video, but today I really wanted to just lay the groundwork of this is what a tool is, this is how we use it, this is why it's important to use. It's important to make items, and is required even to make items for your games. And that's really all that a tool is. And it gets really complicated from there with a lot more scripting and whatnot. However, this is just a very basic overview of what a tool is in Roblox Studio. Hope you enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.